are 5 days to, it's 5 days, 4 days to the start of the first Grand Slam of the season, and a lot of expectation building up to that particular one. The parents have been done. Emma Raducanu paired against Ekaterina Alexandrova, and it looks like a lot of preparations for this particular one. We've also seen some of the big names. But one thing very striking is Corey Coco Golf and Iga Swiatek will not meet themselves till the final. So Aina Sabalenka will be playing with one of the big names. So a lot of permutations and a lot of talking points resulting from the pairings we saw ahead of the Australian Open already.
Yeah, for me, I think it's a very nice one. I saw the pairing. I think it was one to watch out for. We've seen some of the big names, pitted against each other, but you know how it is usually done. It's based on ranking. Sometimes some of these big names, you don't expect them to be paired against each other until possibly when they get to the semi-final or quarter-final, before you see some of these big names, crossing path against each other. But for me, I think the draw was okay. I expect much more from some of these big name players in the WT and even in the ATP for the Australian Open. Don't forget, it's the first major competition of the season, and most of these big name players, they'll be preparing heavily for this very one. Thank God the draw was done a few hours ago, and they've actually known their opponents. It is time for some of these big name players to take out time, work on their opponent, go and take clips of their opponent, watch it carefully, and prepare heavily for this very one. So for me, I think the anticipation is on, and tennis fans across the globe, they are very, very happy to see this one.
Very happy to see this one, and if you ask me, I tell you, the Australian Open is one of the biggest Grand Slam. Not surprised is why it is always at the cutting razor every season, and I tell you, the big names are there. And when we talk about the big names, we talk about like Novak Djokovic. They will have a bye into the first round because of his achievement. Carlos Alcaraz also, but it looks like yeah, we're going to see a little bit of rejigging. World number one currently, Yannick Sinner will play against Harris, and so these are also expectations to see how far the big names will fly their trade going to a particular. When we talk about the minnows, so I'm looking for a way to get into the top 100 to the top 50. This is where the ranking starts. So we have seen pre-competitions from the Brisbane International. We've seen pre-competition from Auckland in New Zealand. We've seen some in the US Cup. Talk about the Hong Kong. Currently, the Adelaide International competition. All this geared up towards that big one. And are we going to see any form of injury concern, from players ahead of the Australian Open?
Yeah, for the last 3 days right now, we've been getting some feelers coming in from the camp of some players out there that have been reported to be injured. That might not be part of this very one, but then we still wait maybe till 24 hours time before we get to hear a concrete information regarding some of these players. Nick Kyrgios, I don't know how fit he will be after coming to tell the world that he's indeed very hopeful of making it to the Australian Open after suffering that bruises he suffered in his hand on the kitchen while cooking on the December or Christmas period. Then also, there are some other names. Jessica Pegula as well at some point had an injury concern. But I think for me, I believe that some of these big name players will be very fit for this very one. And a lot is expected in the Australian Open, more like the cutting razor, just like you said. And a lot of anticipation, a lot of hope from these players that are not well ranked, that are not a better place in the ranking out there, because this is more like a litmus test for them to see if they can be able to beat the mark and actually make a progression in terms of the world ranking. And the Australian Open serves as that good platform or template for them to also see what the future or what the season is going to hold for them. So I think at this point in time, some of these big names that are very fit for the competition, they should be very wary of these relatively unknown players, or some of the players that are not well ranked, because I tell you, it's not going to be business as usual. This is 2025. The new year has come with a new dynamics, a new way of doing things, a new training regimen from some of these players. So for me, despite the injury concern that we had from one or two players, I still think that most of the players that we would love to see in the Australian Open are in for this very one.
One of the players we truly love to see in the Australian Open are in for this one. And we've not heard of any major exemption or exclusion from the forthcoming Australian Open. And fans the environment will be agog. I expect to see some fans experience. Some are already traveling, knowing fully well that Australia is more like the end part of this earth. So a lot of fans will be preparing for this particular one and anticipating to see how far it all plays out. So let's see how all this goes on. But away from that, let's talk some football matters. Mike, yesterday we saw Enyimba in action. Clearly, maybe not a dominance from them, but they showed why they are one of the teams to beat with the the tactical acumen we've seen recently from Stanley Goma, the new coach of the side, after the sack of the former coach. It looks like gradually, even if there are a lot of work to be done in that side, Enyimba are beginning to gather themselves back and then try to see how far they can strive towards the title.
For me, this is what you expect from a big team such as Enyimba, despite their decline in the recent years, but then they still remain one of the powerhouse in terms of Nigerian football and Africa at large, because they have won the CAF Champions League twice, 2003 and 2004. So with that pedigree they have been able to build for themselves, you cannot actually take away the quality of Enyimba. So for me, I think this season they have let go or relieve Yemi Olarewaju of his position, thereby drafting in an experienced coach in the former coach of Rivers United, talking about Stanley Egoma, who has brought his wealth of experience to bear as well. He has played 3 games, won 2, drawn 1, scored a total of 6 goals, conceded just 2. So all these are clear pointers to the fact that there is a change in power, there is a change in baton, there is a change in the touchline. Now we are beginning to see some tactical nuances or tactical ingenuity from the veteran himself, talking about Coach Stanley Egoma, who has brought his wealth of experience to bear for Enyimba. And with the way they are going, they can keep up this pace. I tell you, the season is not yet over, and I still believe that Enyimba can also fight for the title, despite the fact that they are 9 points adrift of the league leader, talking about Remo Star. But I still believe that they have what it takes, because they have 2 outstanding games. I believe they are still in for the title chase this season.
They are still in for the title chase this season, and clearly we'll get to see how far that pans out. But as it stands now, they will continue to play their rescheduled game and also continue to hope that when the season, the second stage of the season resume formally, maybe we'll get to see how Enyimba will cope with the new dynamics of having a veteran in the league, Stanley Egoma, pop up. But like I did mention to you earlier, we have our own Mr. Eneton Obadina, a renowned sports journalist in Nigeria, who will be joining us live. Mr. Eneton, good evening and welcome to Atlantic Television Network.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be on Atlantic Television Network. This is my first time, and I'm hoping we have some fun.
Yeah, getting to see you make your debut, it promises to be go galore tonight, and trust me, we are ready for all that from you. Quickly, let's start in the, because we may not go back to this one. What do you make of Enyimba's run so far? The new coach, do you think everything will be going smoothly the way we expect, or the way we know Enyimba to be?
The jury is still out on Enyimba, I have to be honest. It can be what we call in football a new manager bounce. Sometimes teams changes, coaches, and of course then you have some results going their way. And that's if they have solved all that issues. Because if you are close to Enyimba and following Enyimba closely, you know that the problem was beyond coaching. They've always been playing well. Since the only problem was they were not winning games, and they were not losing that much either. They considered the least goal out of all the 20 teams in the group. That tells you they had a strong defensive setup, and of course their expected goals was they had a few issues around refereeing in terms of legitimate goals being cancelled and all of that. And of course there are some other issues that barely their performance on the pitch of play and have to do with management and player motivation. If they have solved all of that and then he's producing instant result that someone of the quality of Stanley Ekuma now on the sidelines of the coaching is all good and good, that can convincingly tell us that Enyimba back. But like I said, the jury is still out. We cannot fully say they are back. We'll see how they manage all the frictions and all the management shortfalls that were reported. It was underreported, but the news came out about some issues with the players, like when they went to Mozambique, some players arriving late on the day of the match day, and of course their return to Nigeria was stretched to almost a week. That tells you that was a team in chaos, but it seems they have gotten all over that, and things like now we can only hope that this is not the new manager bounce, that is more of a renewed change and a renewed vigor in the way the team is being managed.
Oh, okay. Away from that, now let's take our focus back to the call tonight, and we'll start with the National Sports Commission, and we already know that after the approval, so to say, when the budget was passed, to the National Assembly for approval, sports stakeholders did laud the effort of the federal government, 78 billion naira allocation for sports this fiscal year, and that is a significant improvement from the 31 billion budgeted last year to what we now have this year. So invariably it means that this is truly a renewed hope initiative for Nigerian sports, according to some of the stakeholders, and to them this will also help relieve the issue of funding that has plagued us for a very long time. But let's go straight to the business. What do you make of the activities of the NLC since they were, we saw the reinvention and the scrapping of the sports ministry, and how do you think that that will be this synergy required between the NLC and the sporting federations?
It's a lot of things that we have to consider, and I'll try to put on the plate for people to understand.
Okay.
The first thing is the coming of the NSC is very important for the future of our sports industry. We have to be honest about that. They are pushing towards some certain level of improved professionalism in how our sports is being run. So which is such a big deal for us, because we're gradually shifting away from a fully political ministry to now more of a professional ministry. That said, the journey to achieving that, to making that plain, and of course being the main thing, is still a long journey, and it requires a lot of effort, and that effort is way beyond the stakeholders lauding the improved budget practice, because the problem with the increase in budget, the problem is in what is in the budget for sport. What line items are we putting into the sport budget, NSC budget, for them to run the new year? They will slightly have a bit more money, but I have seen a few of the budget items that they leave a lot to be desired. And you also have to recall that within that 78 billion naira budget is where you have the NFF budget. There is a certain amount also that came for NFF that is taken totally off that 78 billion. You have line items about buying cars, buying building fences and all of that, and that questions are related. Although we do have some wins within that budget, but that does not take away from the effort and expected outcome from the likes of Shehu Diko, who is the chairman of the Nigerian Sports Commission, and of course Olopade, who is the director general. With two of them finding that symbiotic relationship going, it will help them gather speed in terms of using their network.
Okay, hopefully we can get back to you, but Mike, like he said, he talked about Shehu that symbiotic relationship, and that brings the question. A lot of persons are still thinking. Yeah, I can hear you. Anything, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, let me just go straight to my colleague in the studio, and I will come back to you immediately for more analysis. He talked about symbiotic relationship between Shehu Diko and Olapade, and that brings to the question. A lot of persons are still skeptical, saying that, but they have argued that the face of the National Sports Federation looks like the affairs of this deal you know, a lot of people are still getting to terms to understanding what do they have to offer apart from the large sum given to them, which is like, okay, new broom sweeping well. What will they bring to the table? That's what a lot of people are still asking.
I think for me, the pedigree or resume of these two personnel, I think no doubt, they have no doubt in it. If you go through their track record for Olakpade, former commissioner in Ogun State, he did pretty well during his time out there. Sporting-wise, he did very well. Then you talk about Chairman Shehu Diko. Of course, you know, you cannot say that he doesn't have the experience. Of course, he was one time in intermediary between Manchester United, Baltimore that came here, and we saw a lot that he did, you know, for the development of the game. At some point, he was also, you know, a consultant for the National Assembly as well in terms of sport matters. So his track records are there. You know, I think the only issue or the only eyebrow that so many persons are raising from different quarters are some few people that have worked with him before, you know, that possibly one way or the other they fall out of, you know, love per se. These are some of the people that maybe are still having bad blood against him. But then I think it is time for we to jettison whatever, you know, differences that this individual had in the past and come to a round table discussion where we can be able to sit down and say, okay, what do you think we can do in different areas? You have the knowledge, you have the, I mean, what it takes for you to bring in your own advice on how to chart a way forward and bring it so that we can be able to aggregate all of these good ideas together and work for the progress of the nation and not for the progress of Shehu Diko or Lakpade. I think that is what we should be talking about right now. But in terms of what they bring to the table, I tell you from their past antecedent, it's very clear that they are experienced hands. Experienced hands.
And then let's talk about the laws, Badina. Let's talk about the laws and the structure that establish the NLC. Just yesterday and today, there seems to be a shake-up in the different sporting federations. Some secretaries have been removed, and a lot of people are asking, you know, what can the government do to ensure that this law, there are legal backings towards the operations of the NLC?
So interestingly, Shehu Diko was, if not the main person, was part of the people that dragged the NSC bill that were sent to the National Assembly. Although there are still dark clouds about the current state of that bill, if it was signed by the last president, that former president, or it's still being expected to be signed into law by the new president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But putting that aside, I'm putting that so that you understand. It's a bill and it's a law that Shehu Diko, the chairman, is well aware of its origins and was part of people that planned it and of course worked it out. But the case of the breaking news about secretaries being sent to different federations, it leaves a bit of bitterness in my mind, I have to be honest with you, because this is the old practices that we had with the former sports ministry, basically where they determine for federation. It doesn't necessarily count what a secretary general should do to do, and you and I know that secretary general of federations hold some level of power. It is not an position, but an appointment, or so that most of them have been sent to the sport ministry are civil servants in their different various capacities, basically doing civil service work. But I would personally expect that when they have the chance to straighten out the law, establishing the National Sports Commission, this is an area they will have to look at so that we can get professionals. Secretary General position is very important. We've seen some embarrassment at the world level when it comes to Nigerian sports. In different sports where sometimes it comes back to the table of who is Secretary General and a few other things that we have to consider. So in terms of the law, a lot needs to be done, not just about the NFC law. I also heard that we need to also to make the job easy for the new men in charge of the NFC and of course for Nigeria entirely. In the Nigerian sport industry bill, they started the process 2-3 years ago at the federal executive level. They declared sport is no longer like we always joke in pigeon play. It's no longer something you just do for fun. It's now business. So after being declared at the federal executive level being business, it needed a law backing it, and that's where they gave back to the Nigerian sports industry bill that is still being pushed around. The last I heard about it was they are trying to set up a committee between the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Finance, because in that bill carries all the advantages and all the strengths that revolutionize the way we organize and sponsor sports in Nigeria, because it brings in food in the Nigeria.
Robert, are you there? Okay, hopefully we'll get back to him. But Mike, let's talk about the budget. 78 billion naira. A lot of people saying yes, it's a good one. Why we celebrate this budget? A lot of people are also very mindful to advise that this could also be a banana peel for DICO and the NLC, the Nigerian Sports Commission.
I think for me, first, it's a very heavy budget. That is about 3 times 2024 budget, which is about 31 point something billion naira. This year's edition is about 94 point something billion naira, which is a very massive one. I think for me, it's not going to be a banana peel in the sense that there are a whole lot of things to actually look out for in order for us to utilize this money appropriately. But my only concern is about how this money has been allocated to different departments. For example, refreshment alone gets about 100 million naira just for refreshment. Then you ask yourself, 100 million naira just for 365 days? Wow, massive. Then you talk about maintenance and other services, gulping about 880 something million naira. You talk about fueling, then also generator to run some of these, which
recurrent expenditures.
Man, I think the chunk of the money should have been used for infrastructural development. But unfortunately, it was about 23 point something billion naira that was out of that huge chunk that will directly be used for sport related development. And that is my worry, because we have so many dilapidated infrastructures across the nation, sporting wise. Is it not embarrassing and shameful that it is only one recognized or approved stadium that we have in the whole of Nigeria, the 36 states, including the Federal Capital Territory? Only one stadium, which is that of Godswill, Bodakpabio International Stadium in New York. So for me, I'm thinking a chunk of this money should be used for infrastructural development, because I think this is where should be the target point. If we can be able to revamp some of the ailing infrastructure that we have, I think it will do us good. You talk about the UGSNS Stadium in Calabar, nothing to write home about. You talk about the Surulere National Stadium that was once the home of the Super Eagles. Talk about the Abuja Stadium that over $100 million has been spent there by the the business mogul, talking about Aliko Dangote, just for maintenance fee. Then you talk about the Kaduna Stadium. I mean, it is very shameful that a chunk of this money, has been used for something that is not directly related to some of the basic problems that we are facing.
Abadina, I'm sure you can hear me now, and that brings me to you back. My colleague here talked about the issue of directing less chunk to infrastructure. No doubt, infrastructural deficits, plagued our affairs in sports. How do we ensure that these areas are achieved? I don't expect them, even in 4 years' time, to solve all the infrastructural challenges that has bedeviled us. Okay, but I am thinking that there needs to be a starting point in solving the infrastructural challenges that has bedeviled us. And how do you see them approaching all this?
I think they have to go with the private sector. That is the easiest way out for them to achieve something. They have to go with the private sector. They have to go out of their way. If it's to take part of the program from the former sport ministry that adopt a facility, adopt a stadium for them to be able to get people to sponsor, but they have to do it differently from what was obtainable from the last sport ministry that talked about Sunday. That's the sports ministry, two sports minister back. That's Sunday that where they dropped money for the innovation of the pitch and digital scoreboard for national state. The facility was in a very sad state of affair, and then we saw some parts of it breaking down. The easiest way out is government will not be able to fund it. I I am worried that whoever put up this budget, despite the increase in the amount, the budget does not represent the kind of future that we are trying to achieve with our sport in Nigeria. And that's a problem, because at the bottom of all our development is the grassroots, and grassroots needs enough. They need world class facilities to be able to practice. They have to be ready from the world, right from Nigeria. And if you are not going to get that, if you are not going to bring back Abuja on stream with a quality grass pitch that will last, that the maintenance will not be problematic, and of course with every other thing that FIFA requires to certify them to be a standard stadium being put in place, then we have a lot of work to do. I also remind you that if you look at our athletics and then doping, just recently we managed to pass the law, the law that gives us a bit of breather, and that's talking about WADA, the law that domesticates WADA principles for our people. We still have a lot of work to do concerning controlling doping in our sport. We witness, we are somewhere between the red zone of international anti-doping agencies, so we still have a lot of work. I know for a fact that last year within the budget, they have a budget to build a lab where some of this doping testing can be done, but it was not implemented. And I'm expecting that to fast forward it into the they fast forwarded into this
into the budget. Yes, it's part of the budget, and hopefully we'll get to see if that will be implemented. Getting a doping facility, a center where we can checkmate the activities of maybe have a water song or another in Nigeria. That would be fine too.
Definitely, we only have a committee, national anti-doping committee, but they are restricted in their ability to function, because imagine having to take samples from Nigerian athletes, and you have to go all the way to South Africa before you can get a lab to be able to take them and of course certify if they were free of doping. So we tend to struggle a lot. That you see that most of our athletes sometimes until when they get to the international competitions that they get found out that they were doping or not, and of course they have to go through a lot of rigorous testing. But we need that to be domesticated, and of course we need to create a form of job opportunities for people who work as doping officers, because that's what sports brings to you. When you have proper sports structure in your company, a lot of people will be taking off the street. Doping officers will basically be people who will be moving around, not just our athletes, even the football league. I know about a year and a half ago, the NPL body talked about constituting doping committee for the league, but that has not been implemented. It was just a tip of the tongue to them, and then you cannot really ascertain the cleanliness of some of our players of the league, and of course they are not educated. I don't think every year the NPL send them a list of items that falls under the doping list that should be avoided in terms of drugs for recuperation. We saw some years back when
okay. Well, hopefully we'll get back to that. But before we leave, finally, that side, Mike, the next big question to summarize all the discussion about the NLC and the budget is how this budget to trickle down to the grassroots and the synergy. Because for it to trickle down to the grassroots, that means there must be synergy between the NLC and the sporting federations.
It's a very big, puzzle right here for us to solve. How can this money be trickled down to the grassroots where we can be able to build upon and also harness or comb some of the talent that we have cut across the nation? For example, the NFF got about 2.25 billion naira at the NFF. Now, when you talk about the NFF, it's not just about the Super Eagles and Super Falcons.
That's right.
It goes beyond that. Our league, what about the NNL? What about the women football? These are some of the areas that I'm beginning to be bothered on how this money can trickle down to the grassroots so that we can feel the real impact, because that is where you get to catch them young. The policy of catch them young, we don't just say this thing on the paper print, on the newspaper, or just come on air to say this thing. How can we be able to actualize this? For example, can we have a program more like a school sport program where we can be able to channel some fund direct to the school and see how they can be able to harness some of the talent out there?
Well, a lot of people argue that government work in synergy. There are state governments who should also help in achieving some of these things, even if we are seeking for private sponsorship. But state government also needs to work with the sports ministry, the sporting unit, and then the NLC to see that all this comes to limelight.
And that is my big question here. The sport commissioners of every state, how effective are they in carrying out the little tax that was given or entrusted to them at the state level first, before you talk about the national? Because there must be this synergy. Because sport, I mean, we should be more like there should be more like a symbiotic relationship between the states and the national, which is the National Sport Commission. If, for example, you are a commissioner of sport in a state, how effectively have you been able to use the little amount of money that comes to your table within the state? Have you been able to go direct to the local government? Had the local government in your state feel the impact of you being a sport commissioner in whatever area, whether in athletics, whether in boxing, whether in taekwondo, whether in football or basketball? Have you been able to replicate that leadership quality that will give me that trust to say, okay, because you've shown this magnitude of leadership, then I can trust on you that, yes, you can be able to work effectively with the National Sport Commission to bring down the goods or the goodies from the national down to the state, from the state down to the local government, from the local government down to the world. Before you talk about it's a whole lot of work. Okay. And our leaders entrusted in the position of authority over time has not been able to give us the impression that will give us that hope to engender that thing that the National Sport Commission want to implement.
Well,